In the shadowed corners of American history, there are lives so carefully constructed, so delicately disguised, and even the truth had to wait decades to come to light. This is one of those stories. He was a genius with ink and irony, a man who helped invent the modern comic strip, and a man who spent his life hiding in plain sight. His name was George Herriman. But first, hi, I'm Lacey. Thank you for clicking on this video. If you enjoy this type of content, I invite you to subscribe and become part of our community and family. Your support means a lot. Also, if this content resonates with you in any way and you'd like to support my channel so we can continue to bring you new and free content, I've set up an account on Buy Me a Coffee. Through this easy-to-use donation-based tool, you can support the channel with monetary donations. Head over to buymeacoffee.com/Lacey Laverne. All right, let's get back into it. Born in 1880 in the heart of New Orleans, George came into a world already split down invisible lines. Lines drawn by blood, by law, by skin tone. His birth certificate didn't shy from the truth. Under race, one word was typed: colored. Herriman's parents were Creole, descendants of African slaves, French colonists, and Spanish settlers. They were part of a complex caste system that defied the simple black or white binary of the American South. But the law didn't care about nuance. Under the infamous one-drop rule, they were black. And in 1880s Louisiana, that meant something dangerous. The world George was born into demanded constant calculation. What you wore, how you spoke, who you sat next to. Identity was not just personal, it was political. And survival, that required strategy. When the Herriman family moved to Los Angeles in the 1890s, they made a choice. They crossed the line not just on the map, but between realities. In the census records of California, the family suddenly reappeared as white. For George, that meant adopting a mask and wearing it for life. He grew his hair long and wore hats, always pulled low to conceal its natural kink. In photos, he stood among white colleagues, careful to stay in shadow, careful to smile but never too wide. To friends, he claimed French roots, sometimes Greek, never Creole, never African, never the truth. In a society obsessed with racial purity, George performed whiteness like a role in a lifelong play, and he never broke character. In 1913, amidst the loud and punchy world of early newspaper comics, where most strips delivered quick jokes and even quicker laughs, George did something different, something strange, something surreal. He created Crazy Cat, a comic strip that defied every rule. At first glance, Crazy Cat seemed like a simple gag. A love-struck cat, a mischievous mouse, and a dutiful dog. Crazy loved Ignis. Ignis hated Crazy. Ignis threw bricks at Crazy's head, and Crazy mistook it for affection. Officer Pup, the law-abiding canine, tried to intervene, over and over again. But peel back the whimsy, and the strip becomes something else entirely. A fever dream, a psychological labyrinth, a confession wrapped in nonsense. Was Crazy Cat a stand-in for George himself? A being without a clear place, a clear voice, or a clear identity? Newspaper editors didn't always understand the strip. Some hated it, some pulled it, but one man adored it. William Randolph Hearst, the most powerful mogul in the country. Despite criticism and a poor public reception, Hearst personally ordered that Crazy Cat run in his papers, uncharted, untouched, It was an act of artistic protection unheard of at the time. George, the quiet man who denied his past, now had the backing of one of the most powerful white men in America. It was irony wrapped in silence. Despite growing acclaim, George never acknowledged his black ancestry publicly. In fact, he took steps to erase it. Deliberate, methodical, rehearsed. Before Crazy Cat, George drew more conventional comic strips, some of which included troubling caricatures. In The Family Upstairs, the characters often leaned on the popular but deeply racist visual language of minstrel shows, exaggerated lips, clownish features, and thick dialects. Was this simply a reflection of the time? A survival tactic to fit into the white publishing world, or something more complex, a form of self-assurance? A man lampooning his own leverage so no one would ever think to look deeper? George didn't avoid his heritage. At times, he played into the very stereotypes that were used to degrade people like him. The bricks in Crazy Cat may have been symbolic, but the bricks in George's career were real, and some of them he threw himself. He never spoke publicly about his race. There was no recorded moment of confession, no journal entry that bears the burden. His silence was complete, and yet it screams from the margins of every panel he ever drew. By the 1930s, George Herriman was a critical success, if not a commercial one. Crazy Cats ran in newspapers across the country, yet most readers didn't understand it. It wasn't funny in a traditional sense. It was poetic, disorienting, philosophical, a comic strip for misfits and intellectuals. But while Crazy Cat puzzled readers, George lived with another puzzle, himself. He avoided fame, rarely gave interviews, and shunned the spotlight. He never married. He had no children. He moved through life like a ghost, leaving behind only ink and implications. In private, his Creole features still showed. His skin was not white, not truly, but in a segregated America, whiteness could be more performance than pigment. And George, he was a master performer. He told colleagues his ancestry was French, sometimes Turkish, occasionally Greek. One writer even described him as being a slightly exotic look, but dismissed it with a shrug. That was the power of his disguise. It asked no questions, and so none were answered. While the world changed around him, while Black artists, writers, and musicians in the Harlem Renaissance demanded visibility, George stayed silent. Not because he lacked a voice, but because using it would have cost him everything. When George Herriman died in 1944, his obituary in the Los Angeles Times called him a white man of Greek descent. The lie had worked. Or maybe it had simply become too convincing to undo. He was buried in a white cemetery, remembered by peers as a white artist. No mention of New Orleans, no mention of Creole blood, no whisper of his African ancestry. It would take nearly 30 years for the truth to rise. In the 1970s, journalists and scholars began investigating George's roots. Birth certificates, parish records, census data. Piece by piece, the mask fell. George Herriman, founding father of the American comic strip, was a Black man who spent his life drawing brilliance and burying himself in it. Today, Herriman is celebrated in art circles. His influence on comic, animation, and graphic novels is profound. Bill Watterson of Calvin and Hobbes cited him as a hero. Pulitzer winner cartoonists call him the master. But for all the praise, there remains a quiet sorrow that one of America's great artistic minds felt he could not be himself. that the creator of one of the most mystifying characters in comic history became an enigma too. And perhaps that is the final irony. George Herriman drew the world with imagination, with chaos, with love. But when it came to his own life, he drew only shadows. If you found this story as captivating as we did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. We'll continue to uncover more untold stories from history, stories that reveal the hidden truths of those who lived in the shadows of society's boundaries.